Lachy's information is a significant addition to the broad picture. It adds essential detail and brings the picture into sharper focus. It gives meaning to much that we already know. The picture is an ugly one. It shows what has been aptly described as a private government of organized crime, a government with an annual income of billions, resting on the base of human suffering and moral corruption. In 1957, more than 100 top racketeers met at the now infamous crime convention at Appalachian, New York. But until 1960, the federal government had only the barest shreds of evidence about what happened at that meeting. A number of the delegates, including those from Chicago, escaped detection. Federal investigative agencies are now pooling information on more than 1,100 major racketeers. Because of the investigative vigilance possible as a result of this intelligence effort, such a meeting could not occur unobserved today. Because of intelligence gathered from Joseph Lachy and other informants, we know that Cosa Nostra is run by a commission and that the leaders of Cosa Nostra in most major cities are responsible to the commission. We know that membership in the commission varies from 9 and 12 to 12 active members, and we know who the active members of the commission are today. We know that in the past 2 years, at least 3 carefully planned commission meetings had to be called off because the leaders learned that we uncovered their well-concealed plans and their meeting places. We know that the commission makes major policy decisions for the organization, settles disputes among the families, and allocates territories of criminal operation within the organizations. For example, we now know that the meeting at Appalachian was called by a leading racketeer in an effort to resolve the problem created by the murder of Albert Anastasia. The racketeer was concerned that Anastasia had brought too many individuals not worthy of membership into the organization. To ensure the security of the organization, the racketeer wanted these men removed. A particular concern to the racketeer was that he had violated commission rules in causing the attempted assassination of Frank Costello, deposed New York rackets boss, and the murder of Anastasia. He wanted commission approval of these acts, which he has received. We know that the commission now has before it the question of whether to intercede in the Gallo-Profaci family gangland war in New York City. Gang wars produce factionalism, and continued factionalism in the underworld produces sources of information to law enforcement. Indications are that the gangland leaders will resolve the Gallo-Profaci fight. The casualty list of this one gang war alone offers a somber illustration of how cruel and calculating the underworld continues to be. Since the summer of 1961, there have been 5 persons murdered and 13 persons seriously injured. 10 of these were shot and 1 nearly strangled, 1 beaten in a New York nightclub, and 1 beaten and then thrown from a speeding car. We estimated that illegal gambling alone had a gross volume of some $7 billion annually. And the work and the effort that we made since that time, Mr. Chairman, bears out that figure. We have made progress since that time. We have successfully prosecuted 1,283 gamblers for wagering tax or interstate gambling violation. This is a good beginning, but it is no more than a beginning. And the success of our efforts cannot be measured properly for several years. There is, in any event, no doubt that illegal gambling still takes in enormous amounts of money, much of which is used to feed other kinds of organized crime. To illustrate, in an interstate numbers gain case, which we prosecuted successfully in New York City, records seized during a raid disclosed that this single operation grossed $6 million a year. In 3 related cases, successfully prosecuted in the Western District of Pennsylvania, a total of $40 million was involved. Figures of this magnitude have been found all over the country. In the state of Washington, the defendants in a case involving interstate transportation of pinball machines admitted in open court that they paid 20% of their gross income of $16,500,000 to the state in taxes in 30 months, despite the fact that the pinball machines, which were the source of the money, were illegal under state law. Narcotics also provides enormous profits. Because of the remarkable vigilance and law enforcement efforts of the Bureau of Narcotics under Henry Giordano, we know the syndicate leadership has ordered its members to stay out of the narcotic traffic. The greed of a number of racketeers is so great, however, that despite the risk and despite these orders, they have continued to operate extensively in this field. More than a score of Cosa Nostra members have been convicted recently on narcotics charges. This greed and the efforts of the Bureau of Narcotics are typified by a historic case involving an international heroin ring. This operation smuggled, conservatively speaking, $150 million worth of heroin into this country in the false bottoms of trunks supplied to unsuspecting Italian immigrants. How important this case was to the syndicate can be gauged from what happened to the 24 men indicted in New York. The body of one defendant was found in the Bronx, full of bullet holes, shortly before the trial. The badly burned body of a second defendant was found in a field near Rochester, New York, during the trial. Another defendant attempted suicide, and 3 others, the leaders of the ring here, fled the country, 2 of them forfeiting $50,000 bail. The Bureau of Narcotics, picking up their trail in the Caribbean, traced them to Italy and then to Spain, where they were arrested and returned to this country. Ultimately, they were convicted both on the original narcotics charges and also on the flight charges. The remaining defendants were convicted and sentenced to long prison terms. Gambling and narcotics are not the only sources of great income in the rackets. Usurious loans, known in the underworld as juice loans, or shylocking, involve large amounts, as well as frequent hoodlum threats of violence made to ensure repayment. The principal syndicate shylocker in New York was carrying some loan records when he was arrested by the FBI recently for violating probation. While he first contested revocation of his probation at a hearing, he quickly changed his plea to guilty when the court sought to question him about the records. From other sources, we know why he was so anxious to avoid talking about his loans. He had loaned over $125,000 of his own money at usurious rates. The additional money he was handling for the syndicate ran into hundreds of thousands of dollars more. I might say, Mr. Chairman, he was one of those who attended the meeting at Appalachian. Considering that an interest rate of $6 back for every 5 borrowed per week is not unusual in the underworld, the size of the profits from this activity is apparent. If there is no repayment, that rate would compound to more than 700% over the usual 12-week loan period. Yet even the enormous amounts of money involved in these activities tell only a part of the story of the racket's financial interests. What is at least as disturbing and far more insidious is the increasing encroachment of the big businessmen of the rackets into legitimate businesses. In some cases, the familiar weapon of extortion has been used not only as a source of direct income, but as a wedge to obtain control of respectable enterprises. An illuminating case in point began in 1960 with a series of threats directed against the partners in a Brooklyn furniture enterprise. Subsequently, one partner was beaten by unknown assailants. Acting on the advice of a New York rackets leader, the partners then sought protection from another important racketeer, ranked high in the Profaci-Magliocco family. The patron agreed to provide the necessary protection, but announced that he too was now a partner in the business, of which the paid-up inventory alone was more than $60,000. In return for his new partnership, he gave $10,000 to one partner for his entire interest and $5,000 to the other for a half interest. Thereafter, the racketeer proceeded to milk the company dry. Then came a series of mysterious fires, which resulted in an insurance settlement of over $105,000.
Do the members of the syndicate literally take an oath of allegiance to the syndicate?
Yes, they do, Senator. They literally take an oath, and they have the bloodletting, and I think it'll be described here before the committee, but it's those who are members of this organization, who were brought into the organization, take this oath.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General.
Yes, it is.
understand. Thank you.
I might say that in the past, Senator, just in connection with that, part of the provision, well, part of the requirement was that you had to kill somebody in order to come into the organization. Now that seems to have been waived lately, but you couldn't go into the organization unless you had murdered somebody.
Unbelievable.
Mr. Attorney General, just one or two more questions. You've been very considerate
Can I just
of us.
say, just add on there, Senator, you know, there is focus on the attention on the fact that gangster, the hoodlum, is getting more into legitimate businesses, and I express concern about that. I don't want anybody to misunderstand the fact that they are also doing the same things that they were doing during the days of Al Capone, because there have been a large numbers of very brutal murders that have been committed by those involved in organized crime just over the period of the last 2 years. Certainly not a week goes by that somewhere in the United States an individual is not killed, murdered in some kind of a gangland battle, or a witness is garroted and killed. I don't know if you remember Mr. Squilanti, who appeared before this committee.
Remember him very well.
Who was involved in the garbage. Well, our information is that he was taken up into Connecticut and chopped up into little bits and then burned, and that's why they've never been able to find him. So this is going on, Senator. For if one thing is clear, it is that organized crime is a national problem. The racketeer is not someone dressed in a black shirt, white tie, and diamond stickpin, whose activities affect only a remote underworld circle. He is more likely to be outfitted in a gray flannel suit, and his influence is more likely to be as far-reaching as that of an important industrialist. The American public may not see him, but that makes the racketeer's power for evil in our society even greater. Lacking the direct confrontation with racketeering, the American citizen fails to see the reason for alarm. The reason decidedly exists. The financial cost of organized crime is not limited to the vast illicit profits of gambling or narcotics. When racketeers bore their way into legitimate businesses, the cost is borne by the public. When the infiltration is into labor relations, the racketeer's cut is paid by higher wages and higher prices, in other words, by the public.